I have been making over planters for, oh my goodness, at least the last 10 years. And I've been making videos showing you how easy it is to make over planters. So I thought it would be fun to bring you a compilation video of a bunch of different ways that you can either upcycle or DIY planters for your outdoor enjoyment this summer.
It all just goes away. The things I plan to say, oh baby.
So these are my original planters that I made. They are trash can planters. So first I got my trash cans in the mail. I bought these on Amazon. They were $30 a piece, and they did come with free shipping because I have a Prime membership. If you would like to buy these trash cans yourself, I do have a link down below so you can go right to the page. Now they have tops on them. I'm not going to use the tops, obviously, but these are the trash cans. Pretty neat, huh? And it has these top pieces that I think are really going to make it look more like a planter and less like a trash can. And I just wanted to show you the difference. See how tall this one is compared to the other two? And while making my planters, the first thing I did was to drill some holes in the bottom of each of the trash cans because these will be drainage holes for water to leak out. And my drill is dying. My drill is totally dying. I need to replace the battery. And when you're making the drill holes, you want to go slow. Don't push too hard, depending on the type of trash can you have, because it can actually tear or crack the bottom of the planter, aka trash can. And I know it looks like slow motion, but it's not. It's just my battery on my drill is dying. And it's kind of up to you how many holes you want to put in the bottom for drainage. All right, now the fun part. Now we're going to paint. So I'm using chalk paint. This is Heritage brand chalk paint that I got at Amazon. It comes in lots of different colors, as you can see. And then I just painted the trash cans. Now, if you wanted to, you could spray paint them. You could use some type of faux painting technique. It's kind of up to you. I just wanted mine to basically be white, but I did want to have some lines in it, so I only did one coat of paint. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the top ring, but I did decide to paint it. And I think it turned out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this paint job. Now this Heritage brand chalk paint, it's like a primer, it's the paint, it's everything in one. And you can even use it outside. That's where my planters are going to live. So this paint will last outside. I've used it before on a couple of other projects and I've been so happy with it. This is like my go-to paint for any type of chalk painting project I want to do. These are the planters, almost done. Was super excited. And there's the little round rings. See, you can see some of the variants in the paint, which I liked, and that works for me. And voila, look at how cool that looks. And I wanted to show you the difference in size so you can see the new tall planters I have compared to the other two. And I didn't want to use dirt because it's going to make it super heavy if I fill that entire thing with dirt. I opted for pine cones because we have a lot of pine cones where I live, so I just went and picked them up and then filled the trash can probably about half the way full with the pine cones. And then I reused the dirt that I had. Ooh, look at the dust from the other planters just to give a good base for my plants. Now, if you wanted to, you could plant directly in like this, but I decided not to do that, which I'll show you in just a minute. And then I decided to paint the other planters that I've made so that they all match, sort of. And I had some chalk paint already, so I just went ahead and painted them with another color chalk paint that I had. This one is more of a gray, the other is more of a creamy white. And these are the planters ready to be filled with their new paint jobs. These are the flowers that I bought to fill the planters with. And then there's the potting soil and just some other stuff, and that's my son, that's Kyle. And the small planters, I decided I'm going to plant plants directly inside, so I did use potting soil for most of the planters, and they're small enough they're not going to be super heavy with all of that dirt. In the mid-sized planters, I did the same thing, and then just kind of played around to figure out how high we needed the dirt to be in each of the planters for the plants. This is when it's good to have help. And I think we got the mid-size one just about perfect. And these are the planters all filled up, beautiful and on my front porch, and they just kind of make a really cool statement, and I am so happy with how they turned out. Yay! Tall planters! right, first I had to find some planters, and I had these in my barn. They're pretty dirty. And they're got cobwebs on them, and so now I'm just knocking off the dirt and going to clean them up a little bit so I can actually paint them. And I probably could have cleaned these up a little bit better, you know, sprayed them out, let them dry, but I just really wanted to get the dirt and dust off, and I wasn't too worried about how clean they really were. But if you like yours to be super clean, go ahead and wash them down and allow them to dry before you paint them. Next, I found some spray paint, and I got two different spray paints. One was Rust-Oleum. Actually, they were both Rust-Oleum, but one was a satin, and I think that blue is what I want to use. I think that's closest to cobalt blue rather than the navy. So the satin paint is going to be And then I found this spray grip, and you put it on top of a spray paint can, and this will save your finger if you're using lots of spray painting. And it was around $5, I think. And it's actually made by Rust-Oleum, so it just slips on, and then you have basically a grip to spray your spray paint on. And then I just took my time and spray painted each of the planters. And now I found if I used thinner coats, I did not have any issues with the paint running. So I started at the base and then just worked my way around the bottom of the planter. And the reason I did it this way is because that way I can hold on to the top of the planter when I'm turning it. And I found that it just made it easier while I was painting. Now this is the first coat of paint that I'm doing, and I actually ended up doing 2 coats of spray paint over each of the planters. And I didn't have any issues with the paint running or dripping. I think it's because I did the 2 coats versus doing it all in 1 coat. And this Rust-Oleum spray paint, the satin paint, it actually is, you can use it on all types of surfaces, and I made sure that I could use it on these planters and that they can withstand being outside because that is where they're going to live. And I did also make sure to do the interior portion of it because if the dirt isn't going to be all the way to the top and you're going to see the inside of the planter, I want that to be blue too, right? Right. So I went ahead and painted the inside of the planter up to that top edge. Now this is the planter before. This is what it was like before I painted it. And this is the planter after, and this is just with the Rust-Oleum satin paint. It is still wet, so that's why it has a shine. But I want it to have a really high gloss shine, so I did use some triple thick glaze, which is also by Rust-Oleum, and I coated each of the planters 2 times with this glaze. It actually dries really fast, and I didn't have any issues with the runs or the drips. And these are the planters done and waiting to have the plants put in. So first I took some rocks and put them in the bottom so that that will slow down the water so it won't just run right through it. Then I added some compost. Then I put the plants in. And then I filled the planter the rest of the way with some garden soil. And these are the planters all done. I'm super happy with how they turned out. And it is fun, and right now it's festive. And hopefully I will have these for a very, very long time. I made these DIY tall planters out of trash cans. And I had put flowers in them before last year, and I just didn't really like the way they looked. But per my usual, I was playing on Amazon and I saw this. This was so beautiful, and I was like, I want to make that. I wonder if I can do that. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. All of the flowers are here, and I'm going to try to make an outdoor floral arrangement for here. And I want to make a floral arrangement that will last all summer long. I'm not very talented. I don't have a green thumb when it comes to growing plants, so I thought if I could just make something out of artificial plants, yes, fake plastic plants, that would look good, that would be awesome. Because then I'm not going to be spending time watering the plants, growing the plants. They're not going to die. Hopefully these will last all summer long. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, I want to have a planter base. And thankfully I have these tall planters that I made, like I said, about a year ago. They are so easy to make. It's pretty silly how easy to make they are. And if you buy them, they're super expensive, like over $200. I also have all of the plants right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull out my phone because I have the picture that I need to duplicate on my phone. So that is the floral arrangement I am going to try to make. And now I'm going to shut the microphone off because it is so windy. We'll go to the voiceover so that wind isn't annoying you as much as it is annoying me. So these are all of the flowers that I got. I'm a little concerned because the yellow ones, the purple ones, and the red ones that you can't really see hidden back there, they're basically all the same flower. And then they have different leaves on them, different greenery. So that's like a grass. Those are like little round leaves. And then the purple ones over there are like little grasses too. So we will see how this turns out. Hopefully it looks pretty. The lavender is a little bit different, so that's nice. Baby's breath is a little bit different too. So we'll kind of see how it goes and see how this turns out. They're pretty though. So let's make some flowers. apologize for the wind noise. I was able to get my outdoor artificial floral arrangement done. I didn't think they were going to turn out like this, and I am missing one set of flowers that I bought, so I have to wait for those to come to finish it off. But I've never done something like this before. I've always done horse jump flowers, and then you just stick a thing of flowers into a hole. That's it. That's not really hard. This was a little more challenging. I think I could make it better, but for now I'm happy with it. And I do really like that the flowers are plastic, because while I was building it, it's incredibly windy. They didn't blow away, and they bend really easy, so I can make them go different directions if I want. I could probably take it apart and start over, but I'm pretty happy with it, so I am going to leave it like it is. And the best part, I don't have to water these all summer long. The flowers aren't gonna die. They're still gonna look like this, I hope, in the middle of summer with no water. That's definitely a bonus.
So these are horse supplement containers that I have a lot of, and I didn't want to waste them, so I wanted to see if I could turn these into something useful, like a planter. So the first thing I had to do was remove that handle. It's really heavy duty and it's on pretty well, so I did use some snips. I think these are tin snips, but they worked pretty well to remove that handle from the square bucket. And then I just used my hot glue gun because I want to secure the lid in place, because I'm going to stack the other one on top of it. So I just put the lid back on after applying some hot glue. And once that was in place, then I used some E6000, just like 4 dollops of it, onto the lid, because I really want to make sure that this is going to stay in place and it's not going to come apart. And for that instant grab, I did use a little bit more hot glue. And then I took the second supplement pail and put it on top of the first one. So now this is going to make a really nice tall planter. So this is actually a pretty tall container now, but I don't want to have this looking like supplement boxes. So I took a piece of foam board that I got at the Dollar Tree and a handy Subway knife. And then I roughly measured on the foam board of how tall the planter will be. But don't throw away this piece. We need to keep this piece for later. And then I just measured off again roughly each side of the boxes. And then I just used a Subway knife and cut through the foam board. It works really well. This Subway knife is so helpful for cutting through this foam board. It works great. So if you can find a Subway knife, I highly recommend it. The way that I cut this foam board, I actually ended up with 3 pieces that I can secure in place onto the pails. And then using my hot glue, I just put a little bit of hot glue on the pieces that kind of protrude out from the pails. And then I secured the foam board in place. And I wanted it to be a little bit nicer at the top edge, so I did use the straight edge on the top of the pails. And then I just repeated this process with the remaining pieces of the foam board. Now you'll see I only have 3 pieces, but remember I did save that longer, skinnier piece. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that in half, and I'm going to secure it to the pail as well. And then I took that remnant piece. This is the 4th piece of the foam board, I guess you could say, or 4th side we're covering. And it was actually just perfect to cover up that last side of the planter. I really like doing it this way because then I didn't have to fill in any nooks and crannies of all of the different levels that are on the pails. And the hot glue works really well to hold the foam board in place. So there are my pails all covered, and now they're really looking like a planter. So now I'm just going to use some packaging tape. I don't really know what this is other than packaging tape. And I'm just going to go from corner to corner and seal up that empty space that's around the long sides of where the foam board connects together. Now it doesn't matter if you use duct tape or what kind of tape. It just helps to give a nice clean edge to where the foam board pieces join together. And this was the tape that I had on hand, so this is what I used. And I just wanted to show you a different angle. You can see down in that corner, the foam board doesn't quite come together. Well, by taping it in place like this, it helps to keep it so that it's all together and it looks like it's a solid corner. So now here is the magic. This is the trick. You take some spackling paste and just smear it all over the planter. And I've done a planter video in the past where I used caulking, but this worked really well because I want to make these planters kind of look like wood. And the spackling paste is actually a very affordable option. You can find it at Home Depot, Walmart, even on Amazon. And then I just rub that spackling compound all over all 4 sides of the planter. And once I was done with the spackling compound, then I brought it outside. And if there's any rough spots, you can always just use your gloves and run your hands over it. Now see, the spackling compound isn't exactly perfect, but that's okay. I think it does look like wood. So while that was still wet, I did take some spray paint and spray paint the spackling compound because I really want to make sure this is not going to chip off. And I found in the past with other projects that painting the compound while it's still wet really helps the spray paint to adhere to it. And it doesn't matter if you get runs because you really can't tell when you have this much texture on a surface. And now I want to make sure that top edge is all filled in because you can't tell that it's a planter if it's got like an edge around it, right? So I just used some painter's caulk and I just filled in all around the top edge between the pail and the foam board. And then I just used my fingers to smooth everything down on the top edge. And then blended any of the excess from the top down to the sides. And then I allowed it to dry overnight before bringing it back inside to paint it. Now to paint this planter, I'm just using folk art wax. I like the color of it and I think it will really make it look like it's a stump of wood. So I just used a thicker paintbrush and I just painted a pretty heavy coat of the folk art wax onto the planter. And once I was done with the wax, then I took a lighter color, this is just a tan acrylic paint, and just kind of painted in a little bit to give some accents. And again, it really looks like wood. I think you know by now, I really love painting like this. It adds some extra dimension and character to the piece that you're painting. And once the paint was completely dry, then it was okay for me to take my planters outside and decorate my front porch. I took my pumpkin topiary and secured that in the top, and this is my end result. We're going to use some furring strips for our frame. So I have 4 pieces that I've cut out, and these 2 pieces, the long sides, are 17 inches long. And then the 2 shorter sides are 9 inches long. Now I'm going to assemble these furring strip pieces into a frame. So I'm just kind of playing around to see what that's going to look like. I like it like that. So I'm going to secure them together with some wood glue that I got from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to put the wood glue on the ends, and to kind of help set this up, I am going to use some hot glue, just a tiny little bit right on the edge, and this sets up really fast, so this can interfere with your frame. So I went ahead and secured the bottom, and now I'm going to secure the top part. Now I did also use some screws that I screwed in just to make sure it was going to stay together. And then I took some stain, this is just regular stain, and I stained my frame. So I just applied the stain to the frame, and you can see I have my silicone mat underneath because I don't want to get this on my craft table. And then I wiped off the excess stain with just an old rag. Then I took some foam board from the Dollar Tree and I just cut that down to size, not the exact size, because I want to make sure I'm going to have enough to be the back. So this is the back of my frame that I'm making. And then I took some wood glue and I put the wood glue on 2 sides of the frame. And then I used E6000 on the opposite 2 sides. And then I lined up the foam board piece that I had cut out, and I actually secured it in place overnight before I started trimming down the excess because I really wanted to make sure it was dry. So I removed the excess foam board using a knife. And then I sanded down the edges. And if this is your first time joining, welcome! I'm so happy that you're here. And I would be so happy if you would subscribe to my channel and help me get to 100,000 subscribers. That is my goal. And to my returning subscribers, thank you for your continuing support. Now this might seem a little bit interesting, but I took different colors of green acrylic paint and I just put some blobs all over the frame, the inside part of the frame, and then some brown and just different colors, and then I blended them all together. Now the reason I'm doing this is because that foam board is black, and just in case any of that's going to show, because this is going to be a backdrop for the succulents. So then I added some stones and I just painted them so that that would kind of secure them down, and the paint is pretty thick on the back of this. Then I added some Spanish moss, which I did get from the Dollar Tree, and I just sprinkled it around the frame. And secured it a little bit, just kind of tapping it down to make sure it was going to adhere to that paint. And once that was dry, this is where the magic happens. So I'm taking lots of different succulents that I got at the Dollar Tree or on Amazon, and using hot glue, I secured these down inside the frame. Now there's no rhyme or reason of the pattern that I used. I was trying to make this look like the Pottery Barn succulent, so I just kind of randomly placed the succulents, and I started with the larger ones and then kind of worked my way around and just kind of looked at it while I was attaching the succulents to the planter to have it look similar to the Pottery Barn succulent wall hanging. And the hot glue worked really well to secure all of those succulents in place. So again, there is no right or wrong way to apply the succulents. I just wanted to make it look pretty. And the 3 big succulents, I did get those at Amazon. And I got them because they did look really similar to the ones in the Pottery Barn version of this wall hanging. And for the final part of my succulent garden, I used a lot of tiny succulents just to kind of pull everything together. And most of them were kind of a pink or a purplish tone. So I think that really helps to make this look more like the Pottery Barn version. And here is the finished result. This is my adorable little succulent garden. I really like that frame. I think it turned out very nice, and that's just simply furring strips that you can get at Home Depot. And all of the succulents, I think they look really nice in the garden, and you can't really see the background either, whether the garden is flat or when I have it standing upright. This really was a fun and easy project, and I was able to create this succulent garden for less than $50. I'm so happy with how this turned out. I think it looks beautiful. So you're gonna need some round styrofoam or half round styrofoam and a bunch of flowers. And I found all of these flowers and the styrofoam rounds on Amazon. And I separated each of the stems so that I could poke them down into the styrofoam. You don't need to use glue or anything like that. All you need to do is fill the styrofoam with the silk flowers. And I know you're probably thinking, what? No glue? No, you do not need glue to do this because you're going to push down each of the stems really securely and deep into the styrofoam. And this styrofoam works fantastic for making these half round, almost centerpieces of flowers. And it does take a lot of flowers, so that was why I found these hydrangea heads on Amazon. And as you can see, I just kind of separated them all out into single pieces and then secured them into the styrofoam. And if you want to do this for yourself, all you got to do is look in the description box below, and I have links to all of the products that I use to make these hanging baskets. And yeah, I know I probably didn't have to show you the entire process of this, but I really wanted you to see how full each of the individual stems can make each of the styrofoam rounds look. And I'm just about done now with the hydrangea flower heads, and that is looking pretty full, and I think it's awfully pretty. What do you think? Now, if you wanted to, you could totally leave it just like this and just have it be flowers, but I wanted a little something more, so I took these green stems, and again, I did get these at Amazon as well, and yeah, they're pretty plastic looking, but I like the look that it gives, and it gives a little bit of texture and something different to kind of stand out in between all of the flowers. And the hydrangea heads, they have all kinds of different colors, but I was wanting something a little summery looking. That was why I went with the red. And I'm just kind of tucking greenery pieces here and there. No right or wrong way how to do this. You can do it whatever works best for you. But I find by turning the styrofoam piece around, then I can see where I want to add a little bit more. And this is how it turned out. And then I just tucked them into some planters that I already had and hung them up. All right, so now I'm going to show you a bonus. We are going to make a centerpiece because I have a lot of styrofoam and I have a lot of flowers and I have a lot of greenery. And I have my awesome husky tool as well. So I'm just taking some of the leaves that came from something else, actually, I think. And I'm using the wire that came with the hydrangeas, and I cut it down and put it through the center of the leaves to help keep it in place. And I'm just going to put these leaves all the way around the base of this project. And this is why I never throw out anything that I'm using for my crafting, because there's definitely going to be a use for it in the future. And I believe these leaves are from some roses that I had, and I didn't throw them out because I knew I would be using them in a future project. Looks like a UFO. And again, these are the hydrangea heads, and you can see how I'm using my husky tool to snip off each of the individual stems. And this is how I'm going to secure them into the styrofoam. And yes, I was working lightning fast to get this centerpiece done. And yes, I said centerpiece because I'm going to use this as a centerpiece. And that was why I put the leaves all the way around the base of the centerpiece. So just imagine what you could do if you were getting married and you needed a bunch of affordable centerpieces and you didn't want to spend a lot of money. You could totally do this yourself and have something really unique for your wedding and really pretty too. And I wanted a little bit more leaves around the base, so I just attached some more leaves. Just like that. And I wanted to show you, these are the stems that, again, I got at Amazon, but all I did was kind of fold down each of the stems, cut them off, and then cut them into smaller pieces so I can tuck those into the centerpiece as well. And the more flower heads that you put into the centerpiece, the fuller it's going to be. Isn't that pretty? And here are my projects. Yes, this is my back deck, and you can see the centerpiece. It looks really nice on this table. Can you see how this would look really pretty on a center of a wedding table as well? And here are the hanging baskets. And these have actually been outside for probably a month now. And even though we've had horribly, horribly windy weather, they have survived very well. And I think they add a nice little accent to our back patio.
So these are the planters, also known as trash cans, that I have made over multiple times using different types of paint. But I decided, you know what, I want to make these look like concrete planters. And these aren't anything fancy, these are Sterilite trash cans, but I've had them forever and they've actually held up really well. And right now they have a chalk paint on the trash cans on the outside. And like I said, they've held up so well. So the first thing I want to do is rough up the planter itself. So I just took some 80 grit sandpaper because that was what I had, and I just roughed up the paint job that was already on the planter. I think if you use a lower grit sandpaper, it will work even better. So I didn't have any concrete, but I did have this concrete patch by Quickcrete, and it's a vinyl concrete patcher, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. So this concrete patcher is actually vinyl and it's a powder. So I just poured it into a bigger container and then I used a little bit of water. It didn't take very much water for how much of this concrete patch that I was using. So it's always easier to add a little bit more water than put too much water in the first place. And the consistency is pretty thick because I wasn't sure how this was going to turn out. But doing any type of work like this with cement or concrete, you really need to protect your hand. So I got a pair of rubber gloves from the Dollar Tree because they're affordable and they're nice and long. So I put on the gloves first. Next, I applied the concrete patch, so concrete basically, to the planter. Now, when I first started, I wasn't sure what type of a technique I was going to be using. I thought it would be easiest to spread the concrete onto the trash can just using my hands. I've used this type of a pattern before, and that really wasn't the look that I was going for. I wanted to have more of a random pattern, so I decided to use the putty knife that I had, and I would apply the concrete to the trash can with the putty knife. Now, I really like using the putty knife for applying the concrete because you can see all of the different texture and pattern and the different directions that I can make the concrete go. So I think that using the putty knife is probably the best way to go, especially when you get to the top of the trash can itself. As you can see, I can use that putty knife to fill in that little lip that's right around the top edge of the trash can. This is one difference out of any of these trash can planters that I've made that I think makes the biggest difference. At least it does in my opinion, and it makes it look more like a planter and less like a trash can. So I just kept applying the concrete mixture onto the trash can with the putty knife, and I changed the directions that I was going. So there's different variations in all of the raised edges on the planter. Now, after the first coat of concrete, this is what my planters looked like. And I do like that texture, but I am going to add a second layer of the concrete vinyl patcher. So I took the rest of the concrete powder that I had and I made it a little bit thinner. So I added a little bit more water, so it's a lot sloppier putting it on this way. As you can see, well, that doesn't look too sloppy. But I think you can tell that it is definitely thinner than the first layer of the concrete that I did. But this worked really well in adhering to the trash can, which honestly I didn't think was going to work. So I just applied a second layer of that concrete to the entire trash can. Actually to 2 trash cans and a small planter because, you know, why not? I wanted to see what it would look like. Now I should say in between each of the coats of the concrete that I applied, I did let each layer dry completely. So I would put on a layer of the concrete and then I let it dry for 24 hours before moving on to the next layer. But honestly, this is so much fun to play around with, and you can do whatever you want. You could use your hands, you can use a putty knife, whatever you have to make this trash can planter look like a concrete planter. It is so much fun. I did go ahead and add a little bit more of that concrete mixture to the top edge of the planter as well. Now this is what the second layer of the concrete looks like on the planter. And again, I am really happy with the texture that the concrete gave to the trash can. Now, once that was completely dry, I did go ahead and coat it with a layer, pretty heavy layer of a clear satin spray paint because I didn't want the raised edges of the concrete to break off, and I was a little bit worried that it might. So to help keep everything in place and seal this concrete, I did use that spray paint, and honestly, it worked really well. And this was just spray paint that I found at Walmart. And once I was done applying the spray paint, I let that completely dry. Now I had this bare barn and fence paint, so this is an exterior paint that I use for painting my barn and things like that. But I wanted to add a little bit of this white paint over top of the gray concrete because I want to see more of the definition of the layers of the concrete. So I just used a cheap chip brush and I basically just put a little bit of the paint onto the paintbrush and then added some water because I don't want this to have a complete white look to it. I do want to see some of the differences, the darkness in the concrete, and then have that white kind of show through. And I used more water than paint on the paintbrush, and then I just worked my way around the planter. And one thing I can tell you when you are painting something like this is don't be afraid. I found that if you're timid in your painting, and you're not really committed to it, it's gonna show up in your work, in your planter. So just go for it. If you're not happy with the result, you can always add a different color. Just adding that on with a little bit of water or even a sponge or even a paper towel will give you some really nice texture on top of the texture that you already have with this planter. Now I wanted to show you the difference. So this planter that looks more white, this one has the paint on it. This is the original concrete color. So you can kind of play around and see what works best for you. But these are my planters, and holy cow, oh my gosh, I am so happy with how these turned out. Even this little planter, it looks so awesome. And these are gonna look fantastic when they have real plants in them this coming summer. And if you're enjoying this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and then hit the like button. Again, I'm so excited with how these planters turned out. I can't believe it took me this long to make them. If I would have done this the first time that I got these trash cans, I wouldn't have any other trash can planters because these are by far my favorite and they were very simple to make. So go find some tall trash cans and make some DIY concrete planters for yourself.